Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a handkerchief quilt. You can use this to make a regular quilt, but I'm not showing you how to cut out your squares. So just know that you can use this for a regular quilt, but I'm not showing you how to cut
Okay, so your
squares.
first step is going to be to lay out your pattern. You can see mine just played right there. And now you're going to have to pin your two handkerchiefs together. So my blue and white are next to each other, so I'm going to pin those together. You can see me doing that. And you're going to want the right sides together. So now you're going to want to sew along the pins where you just put the pins, but do not sew over the pins. That will wreck your machine. You have to take the pins out. And this whole time you're going to want to make sure that you continue to look at how you had them laid out so that you know exactly how you want them when your quilt is done. Okay, so now I'm just showing you right sides are together, so when you open them, the seam is on the inside. And now I am taking two of my layers because I have my blue and white row done and my orange and black row done, and I'm going to pin those together, making sure the right sides are facing each other. I just have a pin cushion sitting next to me, and I'm just pinning all along the edge. Okay, so now I'm done pinning, so I'm going to go ahead and sew along that line, of course taking the pins out. And you're just going to want to sew in a straight line all the way down. Make sure you're back stitching. And you're going to want to do this to all of your rows so that it'll form one big piece of fabric. And that is them sewn together, so you're going to want to do that with the rest of yours. And now I have the back of my quilt, the fabric, laying out, and I'm laying my handkerchiefs on top. The right sides facing together, of course. So on the handkerchiefs, it's really easy to tell which side is the right side because the wrong side has tags, and you don't want the tags to be showing when you're done with your quilt. So you're just going to lay that out, and then in a few seconds here, I will start to pin it all together. You can't really see, I'm a little bit off camera, but I'm just pinning it together. And you're going to want to go all the way around. So now that you have it completely pinned, you're going to want to sew so that the two layers are together, but you're going to want to leave a little bit of space so that you're able to flip your quilt inside out. So you can see I'm just starting here, going all the way down. And once you get to the corner, what I do is before I hit the very corner, I stop and I turn my fabric so that it keeps going down the next side. Make sure you're removing your pins. And then there, I just finished, and you can see I left a little bit of a gap. And my 2 bandanas at the bottom were a little bit too long for my fabric. I did 2.5 yards of my plaid fabric and 10 bandanas. So 10 was a little bit long, but it worked out. So now I'm just gonna flip my quilt inside out through that hole. That's why you have to leave a hole, so it has to be big enough to get your arm in. So I left a pretty big hole so that I can wiggle around and grab the other end of my quilt. So now you can just see it's all being pulled out. And here you can see I'm just really poking out those corners, because once you sew it shut, it's going to be really hard to poke the corners out. So you want to make sure you get the corners poked out before you sew it shut. So now what I'm doing is I'm just going to turn the edges to the inside so that everything lines up, and I'm just going to sew straight down that line to close off my quilt. But I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to completely keep going and sew all the way around the quilt. It's a little bit hard to see what I'm doing, but right now I'm just closing the hole, and then I'll show you what I mean by sewing all the way down. And I did stop sewing after that little section so I could show you, but now you're just going to keep going on that straight line all the way down and around your quilt. And again, instead of completely going off your quilt, you're going to just turn your fabric so that it creates a nice line, just like making a border. You don't really have to use pins at this point. I didn't. It was easier for me to not use pins, but it's just personal preference. So now I'm just finishing up the last little section, just sewing it. You can't really see the fabric that well, but I'm just closing off the quilt. Just once I got to that other line, I just backstitched, and then I was done. And here I'll show a picture of it.